I'm ChosenArchitect, and this is Project Architect 2. Now, judging by my outfit, yes, we are diving into Mekanism a little bit further, and we're going to be getting into some of the more powerful and also more complicated parts of this mod. And it's going to be for good reason, because we are eventually going to need antimatter, so we might as well get one of the processes completely out of the way, and that is going to be making fissile fuel. And today we're also going to be working on HDPE sheets, and we should be able to use some bonus product, which will be ethylene, to generate even more power with an ethylene gas burning generator. Now, in my last series that I did, I also had to go through the process of getting antimatter and setting up a fission reactor, which is a pretty important part of Mekanism. Now, I do find it kind of enjoyable to actually create this, and each time that I work on making fissile fuel, I try my best to optimize it further and further. But I will say, in my last series, where I played all the mods 9 to the sky, I feel like that was the magnum opus of the way that you can actually set up fissile fuel by simply utilizing quantum entangle porters. Now, this go around, I think I'm going to actually skip on the quantum entangle porters, and maybe this go around make it fewer steps to actually set it up, so you don't have to type in all the different names and all of that stuff. But it'll still be scalable, just not in the same way. Because through the years of figuring out how to make this fissile fuel setup, which is even harder for me to say, I have found that there's really only a few things that actually have to get scaled up. That is, if you're going to at least make a sort of basic, like high functioning water-based fission reactor. And it comes down to essentially two setups, two machines. You're going to need uranium oxide. And uranium oxide needs yellow cake uranium. What becomes the problem is the chemical oxidizer just can't produce enough of those materials. So the uranium oxide and also the sulfur dioxide, those two machines are both chemical oxidizers. They're going to require at least 3 machines that are going to constantly be running in this setup that I'm going to build today. And all other machines that are required for this, you just need 1. And now I've already started to lay this out, and essentially I'm going to be placing 1 machine at a time, just sort of showing you how simple you can actually set this up and how simple you can make this. Now, in placing these machines, I am going to break this down into 3 individual sections. First, we have making the sulfuric acid. This is the first section that we're going to be working on. Then there's going to be a section for making uranium oxide. And then last but not least, we need to combine those 2 sections into the actual production of the fissile fuel itself. Now, we kind of get to skip a part because we have access to sulfur and we have the ability to get sulfur dust quite easily. However, we are going to need a crusher in order to produce said sulfur dust. So this is going to just crush up sulfur from thermal and turn into sulfur dust. So we have no need for a PRC or a pressurized reaction chamber, which we would typically need, which would require water and oxygen and coal in order to produce enough sulfur dust for us to produce this, but we don't have to worry about it in this case. Now, we are going to need a chemical oxidizer, and this is where we're going to need more than 1. For right now, I'm just going to place 1 in, but we will most likely need at least 3 of these. Next, we are going to need 2 separate chemical injectors. So we need a chemical injector here, and we can put a chemical injector here. Now, the reason I'm separating these like this is because of the way we're going to link these up later on. Now, we could use pipes. That's pretty straightforward. But I have a better idea with using entangled blocks instead. Now, last but not least for this setup, we are also going to need a rotary condensator, and this is going to be producing water vapor for this setup. Now, on this other side, I'm going to go ahead and place in 2 separate machines. We're going to kind of mirror the other side, and I'm going to have an enrichment chamber, and this is going to be for uranium oxide. So I'm going to take the enrichment chamber here, and then we're going to feed this uranium ingots, and that's going to make yellow cake uranium, and then that's going to get fed over here into our chemical oxidizer to make uranium oxide. Now, this is another one that's going to need like 3 of these chemical oxidizers to keep up with our just base set. And now on to the next part, which is just the production of the fissile fuel itself, to kind of break it down into the third part. And everything's going to lead into this isotropic centrifuge. Now, we're also going to need to combine these 2 things, and to be able to do that, I'm going to set up the machines over here. And so it is going to actually go into a chemical dissolution chamber, and this is going to process our sulfuric acid with some fluorite to make the hydrofluoric acid. And then right here, we're going to take that hydrofluoric acid and we're going to mix it with the uranium oxide from over here. And then this should end up producing the products that we are going to need to send here into this. So this is going to take that uranium hexafluoride that we're going to be producing, and it breaks it down into fissile fuel. So now essentially what you see here is every machine that is going to be needed in order to produce fissile fuel. Now for this, I'm still going to be using quantum entangle porters. And the reason why is because we have our water for the quantum entangle porter. We also have our oxygen and hydrogen, both set up on quantum entangle porters that were used for this process. But we're going to have residuals left over from these machines, so we might as well utilize them. And I think we have plenty of oxygen and hydrogen coming in with these both fully upgraded. So now let's go ahead and start working on the sulfuric acid production side. I'm going to place my logistical transporter here, and then on top of that, I'm going to use an EMC link. And what I want to do is I want to send sulfur into the crusher to be crushed up. And of course, we're going to upgrade this machine into a higher tier, but you can see right there, it's going to crush that into the dust. Very slow right now, but we'll get much faster as we upgrade these machines. Now for these machines, I am going to have to do a lot of configurations, but not too much. As from left to right is typically the input and then output for these machines. And that's for most things. So for example, the chemical oxidizer, we need to receive items from our crusher into the chemical oxidizer. And so by default, this is typically already set up that way. For example, here is the input and the output outputs products to the right. However, we're not outputting any items in this case. However, we are going to be outputting gases. And you can see by default, it's already ready to go. There's actually no configuration needed in this case. And that goes for most of these machines. Now, the chemical infuser or anything that's going to require a secondary product, for example, this first chemical infuser is going to require that sulfur dioxide from this machine, but it's also going to require oxygen. And I plan on putting the things that it requires extra into the back. And so we just need to make sure that it can receive those extras from the back. Notice by default, it is set as the right and left as an input. But what I can do is underneath the gases tab, I can make sure that this is cleared by holding shift, and I can make this a secondary input like that. And then when we use our quantum entangle porters, we just need to make sure that our entangle porter is set to, for example, oxygen in this case. So I will select that. And then in the back, we just need to make sure under gases that the front is set to output and we have auto eject on. And you can see that has now filled with oxygen. And then I just want to make sure that the right side is actually the main output. Now keep in mind, the goal of this is to make these stackable so you can stack another machine on top of this machine, and you can use your configuration tool to copy the settings from the bottom machine to the top. And same goes for the quantum entangle porter. All of those are copyable and you can paste them right onto the next one if you need to upscale this particular setup. But believe me, this is going to be producing a lot just with one base set, like up to 256, I believe, millibuckets of fissile fuel per tick. Now this next little section might get a little bit confusing as we're going to need to get our water vapor up and running first, so we can kind of visualize how we're going to set up our chemical infuser here, which is also going to require water vapor. So let's go ahead and think about this. I'm going to need water vapor into this slot back here. And the way I'm going to do this is entangling this block. So underneath the gases tab, we want to make sure that the back is also set to that secondary like we did before. I'll go ahead and clear this out. And then the front, we'll go ahead and clear this. And I'm going to make the right the output, just like the other machine. And that's how I like to lay it out. Left is input, the right is output. Now, if I do that, I need to make sure my rotary condensator, its output is on this face here. Now, another thing you can also do is you can utilize this wrench, and if you hit in, you can actually open this up and you can technically configure this machine from the outside. So if I went to gases, I should be able to shift right click, and now I have set this to an output, but I still like to go into the machine and just kind of make sure. So we should have this set to condensating mode. So I think it does need to be condensed. No, condensing turns it into water. Decondensating turns it into a gas, I do believe. And that's what we need. We need water vapor. So let's get a quantum entangle porter. And I'm going to place this one in the back as well. This is going to be set to water. So let's go ahead and have that set. And we need to make sure the front is auto set to output underneath the fluids tab, and we turn that on. Okay. So this is now receiving water and it is turning it into water vapor. And of course we want to make sure that that gas is, like I said, outputting to the front. So there we go. And now we have it outputting to the front. So what should happen is if I entangle that, because it is set to auto output, if I have that set up correctly underneath the gases and auto eject, I can basically put this block right here into the position of this block by entangling it. And so what that should do is it should allow this machine to auto output directly into this chemical infuser. And so we should see this slot right here fill up with the water vapor. So I will shift right click this machine and right click it in here. And we should, if all is well, potentially work. And now this is where I was hoping something like this would work, but it doesn't in this particular case. And I almost wonder if I was to move this back and then we added a pipe, for example, like a pressurized tube. I think pressurized tube, we might be able to get that to work. So I would just need to feed the pressurized tube and essentially pull the vapor from it. This might work, but it's a little less compact than I was hoping for, but it does work. You can see it is pulling the vapor into here, into the back like I wanted. And you know what? This actually might be a little bit better for scalability. Now, I'm just going to use a logistical transporter to send, for example, the sulfur dust into this, and it is scalable there. Should work pretty well. And over here, I should be able to just run a pipe like this from this machine on. And I just need to make sure that my output is over here. And so that should just send the gas right into here and make the sulfur trioxide. That's pretty straightforward. And because this is set to auto eject, I don't even have to configure the tube by clicking it with a configurator or anything. So the more of these I add, I'll just continue the piping and I'll upgrade these pipes into the highest tier ones here soon. But this is it. We're essentially running the line through just like you see. And same also goes for this. We just simply put that there, and this line is connected together. And now this is where I am going to put a quantum entangle porter, because this is producing a very important thing, which is sulfuric acid. And I definitely want to have this going into a quantum entangle porter. Now jumping over here, now that we have that whole section done, this is going to actually utilize another entangled block. So let's go ahead and clear this one. And I'm going to place this entangled block right here. And this is actually going to be entangled in this same room to a drawer that we have set up over here. So we have a drawer that is constantly being filled up with uranium ingots. And so I want to make sure that drawer gets entangled. And this saves us on channels for applied energistics. So if we have this here, we don't really have to worry too much because this should constantly now pull out the uranium ingots just like that from the drawer. And now over on the chemical oxidizer, I'm just going to go ahead and clear out the items because typically, like I said, it goes from left to right. And I'll just make the input right here. And then under the gases tab, we'll clear this and we'll make the left the output for this. Now, with this being said, this is another important chemical. And I think that after we have this, we should definitely put that in a quantum entangle porter as well, because it gets a little bit janky. If you use these, for example, these entangle blocks here, like I am on this machine, it does get a little bit janky as the determining what side is what whenever you change directions. It just gets all over the place. So as much as I wanted to avoid using quantum entangle porters, they're just so good for this. And so here we go. We now have a uranium oxide. And once I get the pipe set up here to pipe in the yellow cake uranium, this should really start working. We need to make sure though that this is set to auto eject the items, and perfect. Now we have this. And like I said, this is going to probably need the scalability anyways, so it's good to have that entangle porter. So now we get to make the fissile fuel itself. So this is going to be the chemical dissolution chamber. We do need to kind of go in here and configure this just a little bit. Now this is going to receive items, so we do have to worry about the item config. I'm going to set the input into the back for this. We don't have to worry about anything other than that. And then the gases, simply, we're going to input from the left and we're going to output to the right. And we need to make sure this is auto on. And so if we get another Mekanism tube, pressurized tube, we should be able to just simply pipe the output over here. Now, I am going to need fluorite. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have fluorite back here. Let's go ahead and link that fluorite. And then we'll just use a logistical item pipe. And so that's going to send fluorite into the slot here. And then on this side, this is where we're going to need to be handling that sulfuric acid. So this is where entangle porter comes into play. So we just simply place this down. We will select sulfuric acid. Very straightforward. And then on the side under gases, we just need to make sure this side is set to output and auto eject on. And so that's going to send that over there, and that's going to start producing that product. So back over here to the chemical infuser, we're going to need to worry about a couple of different things as well. So we're not going to worry about any items going in, but gases we are. So instead of having the right side be the input, I'm going to go ahead and clear all of this. I'm going to have the left be the main input for what we're receiving here. And then the secondary input, I'm going to feed in from the back. And then our output is going to be to the right, which is going to go into the quantum entangleporter that I just placed down, which is going to be the final product, which is going to be uranium hexafluoride, which is what we're going to just send right on over through the quantum entangleporter into the isotropic centrifuge, which is the final step. So I just need to get a few more things. This needs to go here. And so that is sending this product, and you can see the hydrofluoric acid. And then we just need to get our uranium oxide into the back here. So another quantum entangleporter. These are so nice because they can auto output essentially. And so we need to select that uranium oxide. We'll set that. And then we just need to make sure under the gases tab, the output is here, just like this. And we have auto eject on, and you can see it's now filling up. And last but not least, we just need to take the name of that and paste it into here. And because unfortunately it doesn't fit all the way, I'm just going to go ahead and set it like that. And then the only thing we need to do is just run a basic pressurized tube into here. And you can see the uranium hexafluoride is now stored underneath that channel. So now, last but not least, we need to configure the isotropic centrifuge. So this is going to be a little bit different than default. We're going to go under the gas tab. I'm just going to clear it. So the back is going to be my input, and the front is actually going to be the output on this machine. And then we'll power it. We'll probably end up doing some wireless powering or something like that. But in the back, because that's where we're sending our product here that's being generated right there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select that uranium hexafluoride, go ahead and set it. And then we need to go under the gases tab. I just like to clear everything and make sure the output is set. And then we just hit auto eject on, and that's going to fill that up, and it's automatically going to start producing fissile fuel. Of course, it doesn't have power yet, but that fissile fuel is going to go right into the front, into this quantum entangleporter, in which we will use later on to power a fission reactor. And I tell you what, I don't think it gets any simpler than this. But if you do want a more compact version of this that fits in like a 9x9 room with scalability, I do recommend you checking out the ATM 9 to the Sky playlist, or just my All the Mods 9 playlist, where I also set up fissile fuel. But just like that, you can now see I have fissile fuel inside of this quantum entangleporter, and life is just good. This is actually pretty nice. You know what? I might actually have this place into the bottom just to make it look a little bit nicer. I could have it placed into that block. So all I have to do is go under gases. Instead of it outputting here, I'll just have it output to the bottom. And this quantum entangleporter is still configured. We just need to make sure underneath gases that the input is set up, and that should be it. Like, I don't think there's anything else I have to do here. That looks nice and clean. Well, I guess I kind of lied when I said that there's not anything else left to do, because I still technically recommend having at least 3 of these chemical oxidizers per setup over here. But now that we have them all configured, all we have to do is use our configuration card and copy the settings over. It's super simple, just like this. And in this particular case, I just need to place in my pipes. And then for this one, I'm just going to need some logistical transporters. And then I could just pipe the items out of here too, or the gases out of this directly into the top of the quantum entangleporter. And keep in mind, you can click the alloys onto these pipes to upgrade them. So if you're worried about making pipes and having a bunch of crafting recipes, you don't actually have to do that. It's honestly pretty quick. And if you have a long strand, by the way, of these cables, you can just keep right-clicking the alloy on it, and it will continue to cover all of the cables, I believe 8 at a time. It is a little wasteful in this particular case where I'm only upgrading 2 pipes, but it is pretty nice when you, for convenience sake, when you have a ton of cables. Now also make sure when upgrading your machines that your chemical dissolution chamber gets gas upgrades. This is really going to make a huge difference. And you're going to want to make sure you put that in there. Now, after getting all of the machines upgraded and all of this done, I'm always so disappointed in these pipes. As much as I love utilizing Mekanism's pipes, they're just not going to cut it here. I mean, honestly, it would be better for us to use a quantum entangle porter to simply send the items right here, technically, or using the pipes mod to do it. Because this is only able to, as you can see, direct into this one container for some reason, as it just doesn't like this section here. I mean, it should send up to this area, and these are configured correctly to be able to receive the items. But as you can tell, it's not doing that. No matter how I change this, oh, maybe setting that actually did change it. So now it's set to pull. I'm not so disappointed anymore. I guess you do have to make sure it's in full extract mode. Well, no, actually, it's still not as good as I thought, because it's leaving the top chemical oxidizer not working. All right, so item pipes it is, and this should be able to keep up, especially probably just with the regular diamond upgrades, I would assume as well. So we'll set that here, and just a single diamond upgrade. Watch this keep everything nice and filled. Just beautifully. It's so much better. And same thing goes for this side. It's just going to work much, much better. Now, by the way, the isotropic centrifuge, this bad boy needs like 200 and some odd thousand RF per tick in order to produce. Right now, I'm going to limit it with this gate, and this gate is sending at 50,000 FE per tick, but yeah, later on, we are definitely going to get this going once we get more power, which is going to be coming very, very soon. Now, we got ourselves Fissile fuel done, and I did promise you that we were also going to tap into those HDPE sheets, which of course is short for high density polyethylene. And yes, we're going to be producing ethanol in this production, and hopefully we can scale this and make a scalable solution to producing not only ethanol for generators, but also producing those sheets. And so if we can handle the logistics of these machines that you see behind me, we should be able to use this to not only do that, but do it cleanly and efficiently. So now first things first is the crusher and how we're actually going to generate some of the materials for this. For example, we are going to need biofuel, and biofuel is gained through a ton of different ways. I think one of the best is if you get your hands on a mushroom block, that would probably be one of the best ways. It's going to cost the least amount of EMC. But if you're looking just for sole biofuel amounts, then I think pumpkin pie is going to be one of the best options, because pumpkin pie offers 8 of the biofuel per pumpkin pie. And yeah, it's EMCable, so might as well use that one. And that's pretty straightforward. So I place this in, and we can now start to pull out pumpkin pie and send that directly in here to be converted. Of course, we'll get this machine upgraded here in a minute. Now, on our first PRC, I'm going to want to make sure that we can get ourselves some fluids into here. So we're going to kind of run into one of these issues where, well, we have sides. And how do we actually make this scalable where we can, for one, feed this machine water, feed it hydrogen, which it also needs, and also pipe in items and pipe items out of it, and also pipe another gas out of it. And this is where I think quantum entangle porters are really going to shine yet again. So we can actually pass items straight through this. So for example, let's say I want hydrogen to go in here. I'll go into the gas tab and making sure the left is input for the gas, which it should be. We can go ahead and select our hydrogen, and then we need to go into our gas section and make sure this is auto sending out over here. But we can also send items into this and auto eject items directly out. So I can say, go ahead and receive some items from the left and make sure it also pushes items automatically out into this machine. We just need to make sure that over here we have items allowing to be pulled in. So that means from this one side, we can handle items and fluids, and we can also handle gases all from one side. And I think this is going to be a pretty common theme for this and accessing multiple parts of the outputs of machines, allowing you to have multiple faces accessible. So in this particular case, I'm just simply going to have the items that are generated here sent into this entangle porter and then immediately sent into the chamber. And then of course we can't forget this is also going to need water, so we might as well select water, and we'll set that, and we'll make sure that our fluid section is outputting from the front automatically, and we'll just set that to on. So now we have water, and we should also be receiving hydrogen. I do believe under gases, under hydrogen, we have output. And there we go. So now we have the PRC up and running. So this is going to generate an item, but it's also going to generate ethylene, which becomes a little bit of a problem if we don't just automatically use all of it. And so for this, I'm going to use another quantum entangleporter, but this one is going to be called ethylene and substrate. So we're going to be handling two different things from this. We're going to be taking in the substrate as an item to be used later on. And that just needs to have the input set up. So we just need to make sure that auto output is turned on for this. There we go. So that'll send the item into here. And so we should have that item stored. And then we also need the ethylene to go in here, in which it already has. Now, ethylene is one of those weird things where if you don't use all of it, you might run into some problems. So what I want to do is to use a chemical tank here, and I'm going to make sure the input is set up here and make sure we are auto outputting over to the side and make sure auto eject is on underneath the gases. Now, the reason why I want this to be set up is because I want to send the gases output into this automatically. And I want this to be set up to dump excess ethylene if it does fill up, to make sure that this will never stop. And this is all configurable, and we're able to actually scale this up and copy this and stack it as much as we want to produce as much ethylene as we want, and all of that ethylene will be used here. This is just a backup. Now you may have noticed that automatically went into the rotary condensator, which is kind of important because the rotary condensator actually needs to convert this into liquid ethylene. And so it is going to do this process, but this will actually build up. And we need that liquid ethylene to be mixed with oxygen and that substrate that we just produced. Now with this, we should be able to pull that liquid ethylene using a regular mechanical pipe and send that into this machine, and then I'll use a quantum entangleporter in the back, and this is going to be set to oxygen. We're going to go ahead and get that completed, and we need to make sure the gases tab is set to auto eject, and so now we have oxygen in here, and the way I have this configured is I have the input for items on the bottom, I have the fluids to the left, and the gases to the back. And so that's how this is filling up. Now we got to get the items, so remember we set up that other quantum entangleporter, and what I'm going to do is grab another one. And this one, we just need to make sure that we have the config set up before we select anything. So in this case, I'm going to go under gases because it also has gases, and make sure that's cleared. Go back here and set this to output and auto output. And then we just need to select the ethylene and substrate. And what that'll do is automatically push the substrate into the machine. And now we're good to go. So the only thing that we should be producing is the sheets and also a little bit of a byproduct. So if we take a look at what that byproduct is, you can see in this case, nothing, but if we were to use the regular ethylene to dupe it, we will essentially be producing oxygen. Don't want to do that, so I guess we just simply need to send the items over. So right here, I will go to items, make sure this is set to output, auto eject on, and then we need a logistical transporter that just needs to travel into an enrichment chamber, and that will be the final product of actually producing our sheets. So now with all of the upgrades in, we can go ahead and get these machines powered up, and we should start to see the production of these HDPE sheets being produced, while we're also we should eventually start to build up. Now I am going to just let this build up to the 2048 that this drawer can hold. And once that's done, this is where this thing really starts to kick off, and we're going to put a void upgrade on here, I believe, or I could just let it build up, but we'd have to make sure we get rid of these extra substrate pellets, kind of bypassing this. And the way that we could do that is we could set up some sort of container that starts to pull them in, and then it's just gas we're producing. But I still think that we are going to end up producing an abundance of gas. You can see right here, there is a buildup. And this is where the scalability comes into play, where we can scale this up and produce a ton more of the gas once this starts to fill up. And that gas can be used to generate roughly 72,000 RF per tick in a gas burning generator. But the actual plates that we have right here, or the sheets, we're going to need those later on. So believe me, it's definitely worth getting this all up and running. And I will say the scalability of this is 100% here. All you have to do is place in a new machine and make sure you place your quantum entangleporters. And then all you have to do is just copy the settings to the one above, and all of this is scalable. And so guys, with that, I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and hopefully you learned something new, whether it was about Mekanism's fissile fuel or about generating ethylene or the HDPE sheets. which are 100% required for late game Mekanism. And of course, guys, if you did, be sure to click that subscribe button if you haven't already, and give this video a huge thumbs up. I really thank you guys so much for watching. I thank you guys all for commenting down below, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. And with that being said, it's time for me to thank the amazing supporters of today's episode. That amazing thanks is, if I can spell thanks right, of course, is going to go out to Agent Case. Thank you so much for your amazing support and choosing to support me over on the Discord by becoming a Discord premium member and supporting me in one of the best ways possible. And of course, guys, I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Be sure, if you haven't already, join the Discord down below. I do hang out in there all the time, and I would love to chat with you guys if, of course, that's something you enjoy. And guys, of course, I'll see you in the next one. And as always, thanks for watching. Bye!